Greetings, gentle viewers. I'm George from Ireland. So I'm on the south bank of the River Thames. You can see London County Hall here, once the home of London's local government, but now used for various other purposes like an aquarium, the London Dungeons, not a real place of detention and torture. A tourist attraction. You can see the London Eye obliquely there. Anyway, and that is a lion. The Lion's Gate from the Lion's Gate Brewery, which is here during the First World War, largely destroyed by bombing in the Second World War, and it's the site of the South Bank Centre. That away, you can't see it from this angle, but anyway, King George VI requested that this lion be preserved here. Well, it's not in its original location, so it is. Anyway, so that's the Queen's Walk. You can go along there, but I'm going to cross over Westminster Bridge, one of the most famous and iconic bridges in the world, and talk a little bit about the Thames, Old Father Thames as we call it, the River Thames. So there we are looking east, flowing out to the North Sea, and here we are looking west. Thames is not that long, only a bit over 100 miles long. Obviously it rises near Cirencester in western England, and meanders through the counties of southern England, flows through Oxford, flows through Reading. There's Henley-on-Thames in the middle, where there's Henley Royal Regatta, late June every year. The largest rowing competition in the world, been going since 1839. And Henley Royal Regatta, well, it's got academic crews and non-academic crews, as in their crews from schools, from university, boat clubs, and then boat clubs which are not related to a school or to a university. So it's been international from a fairly early time. Crews from Ireland, we were rowing there from the 1870s. Of course, we're part of the United Kingdom at the time, so arguably that wasn't international. But these days, there are crews in the United States, Canada, Australia, France, Germany, Switzerland, the Czech Republic, Poland, on and on. There you can see Big Ben, but Big Ben is having a facelift. The clock is fine, they're just doing the rest of that tower. So that's been up there since 1859. It was named after the clerk of works, his name was Ben. So I always find it very reassuring to hear the bong of Ben. No, not as in for smoking cannabis, but the sound, the bong, when it strikes a certain hour. And there, of course, are the Houses of Parliament, also known as the Palace of Westminster, designed by Sir Charles Barry and Augustus Pugin. Remember the original one, burnt down in 1834. And the English Parliament had been in and here most of the time for centuries, going back to Anglo-Saxon times, on roughly that site. There used to be an island, Thorney Island. Anyway, so you'll notice behind me how it's impossible to drive up here, because about 2 years ago, some chap, he drove, see these things, blocking cars, and on that side, you can drive across the main part, but you can't drive on the pavement. Well, you shouldn't be able to drive on the pavement anyway, but they made it impossible because some bloke mowed his car into the crowd and killed loads of people. But so here we are, looking that way towards the railway bridge, which connects Charing Cross Station to Waterloo Station. Now, the United Kingdom really is a third world country, and let me demonstrate how. Because we have to have these pedicabs, these cycle rickshaws. How about that? I remember seeing The Commitments, that 1991 film from Ireland, and a doubler saying Ireland's a third world country, which was a joke even then, but it obviously wouldn't have worked as a joke 10 years later. But I like to say that one about the United Kingdom. All right, so the Thames is tidal. The water's flowing in from the North Sea and right up to Teddington that way, which is, as the crow flies, not very far, only about 10 miles. But because of the meanders of the river, it's more like 20 miles from here. So nice, wide, generous pavement, you may get the idea. And there's a cycle path on either side. Nobody's cycling at the moment. So earth hath not anything more fair to show than this. This is where William Wordsworth composed upon Westminster Bridge, way back in 1802. Now, there's some lions' heads near the riverside. You probably can't make them out very clearly. I might have to zoom in a bit, actually, later. But anyway, there's this saying. It's not zooming for me. Never mind, I'll try it later. The lions' heads were an early flood warning. You see how high the river is in relation to them. You see they're a green colour with a ring around the mouth. When the lions are drinking, London is sinking. When the lions are ducked, London is in trouble. Okay? So you're getting a bit of a better view of the front elevation of London County Hall, only completed in 1922 because construction was interrupted during the First World War. And if you look closely, I can't make it out from here, in the middle it'll show you the coat of arms of the City of London and of all the boroughs of London, 32 boroughs as there are now, just the same number as the counties of Ireland. So there are many, there's river buses there going up and down. Touch your Oyster card, your blue Oyster card or your debit card, just the price of an ordinary bus fare, going several miles up and down the river. It goes from the north bank to the south bank to the north bank to the south bank, sort of zigzagging up around. So plenty of stops. So a very practical way to get around, and sometimes, well, certainly faster than road traffic a lot of the time, and might even be faster than the tube occasionally. A much more pleasant journey. You can sit inside, you can sit outside. But there are also cruise boats which are more expensive, and cruise boats go for longer journeys. You can buy food and drink on the river bus, you can buy proper meals on some of the cruise boats. Cruise boats have got more seats on the upper deck. Showing you there, when we get closer I'll show you more of them. Anyway, this building nearest the bridge here, that's called Portcullis House. My finger is pointing to it now. Portcullis House, that was only built in 2000, and those are offices for members of Parliament, because there weren't enough offices, there wasn't enough desk space in the House of Parliament. I remember Jeremy Thorpe, the Liberal Party leader, when he visited various state legislatures in the United States, he lamented that in a state legislature, the legislators usually had better facilities and accommodation than members of Parliament in the United Kingdom, which of course was a national parliament, not something subnational. All right, so a great way to get around. These open-top bus tours, they're not cheap. They're of the order of £20, but hop on, hop off all day. If you've got a limited time or you're not confident about navigating the system, I'd very much recommend getting on one of those. Now, the barrier here is quite low, as you can see. Like for me, it's like below waist height, so it could just help you topple over. No thanks. So you'll often see people here doing various games, gambling games, guess which tin the ball is under or something like that, trying to win money off you. Simply in the House of the Rising Sun. Okay. So then look at the coat of arms here. Yeah, you can see on the further side the royal coat of arms, the Harp of Ireland and so on. And the three lions, Bridge of Normandy actually, and the lion rampant of Scotland. People are getting in the way. But look at this lantern. Wow. Look at the artifice went into that one, hey? Very detailed. People seldom stop to appreciate these things. And they got the Tudor rose. Unfortunately, it's not coloured. I'll try and find you an example of one. Like here, for example. It's meant to be intertwining red and white roses because the end of the Wars of Roses. The Lancasters and the Yorkers, two branches of the English royal family, battling it out for 30 years, from 1455 to 1485. Although it was by no means constant warfare, there were long periods of peace during that time. Historians have calculated they only fought for about 2 years if you put together all the periods of combat. So it all goes back to Edward III, his 5 sons, and their descendants marrying each other, creating 2 branches of the English royal family, the House of York, the House of Lancaster, and fighting for the crown, eventually ending with the Battle of Bosworth on the 22nd of August 1485, when the Lancastrians finally prevailed, defeated the Yorkists. So Henry VII became king, and his distant cousin Richard III was slain in that Battle of Bosworth Field. And so then Henry VII married Elizabeth of York, as in Richard III's sister, so thereby reuniting the 2 branches of the royal family. And then they made a rose, because the 2 roses, the Rose of York, which is white, the Rose of Lancaster, which is red, and they made a concentric rose, red, white, red, white, red, white. I don't know whether such a rose can actually exist, whether you can breed them. We don't want it pink, and it's not the yellow rose of Texas. Now, if you believe my friend Will Shakespeare, he claims that one of the gardens along there, on the north bank of the Thames, near the embankment, that the 2 sides, they plucked their roses at the beginning of the Wars of Roses, and that's how they began with their symbols. I don't know if that's true. If you go to York, that fair city, which is more or less the capital of northern England, you'll see on a great big Ferris wheel a huge white rose there. So it's the White Rose County. When I lived in Yorkshire, my neighbour used to fly a flag with a white rose on a sky blue field. And the Wars of the Roses still continue with a roses match, as in a cricket match, between Lancashire and Yorkshire every year. So there is a healthy rivalry between these 2 major counties of northern England. Yorkshire, well, God's own county as they call it, the largest county in England in territory. So large it's the only one that's subdivided into ridings. North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, West Yorkshire and East Yorkshire. but East Yorkshire is usually known as Humberside, as in the River Humber flows through it. Confusingly, the River Humber is sometimes known as the River Hull. There's a city, Kingston upon Hull, and the River Humber is the one which bisects the city. Now, well, some little ferries to show you, going hither and thither. Okay, so this little one will be a more expensive ferry, and they can go all the way down to Hampton Court. See the fabulous palace down there, Hampton Court Palace, built by Cardinal Wolsey, who was Archbishop of York. And when he died, it was sequestrated by Henry VIII, became a royal palace, but the royal family almost never spent any time there. So that's like 3 hours, that cruise at a sedate pace, often with a commentary telling you what's what along the way. And there's several stops along the way in case you want to get off part way. And in the distance you can see a river bus going away from us. The city cruises, again, this will be a more expensive one. And the ordinary river buses don't have a commentary, but ones like this, they do have a commentary. So sometimes you can get these included in your in other things, such as what was I going to say? An hop-on, hop-off bus tour. Some of them include a cruise. Okay. Now, if you're going south over the river, that away, you're going towards Waterloo Station, which you can't quite see. Waterloo Station from here. There's St Thomas's Hospital, and there is the Florence Nightingale Museum of Nursing there. I'm not sure if she ever actually worked in that hospital. She was first of all in charge of a sort of sanatorium for wealthy elderly people on Harley Street. Harley Street being the street where the most eminent doctors in the United Kingdom work. But where she's working, I'm not quite sure if it was a hospital or more of like a retirement home, because she was from a very well-to-do and affluent family, born in 1820. So we're talking sort of 1840s when she started to do that work, the mother of modern nursing. Anyway, so we shall continue. So Westminster Bridge, whereas if you look this way, you can see Lambeth Bridge, which was only opened in the 1920s, because just south of that, on that side, is an area called Lambeth, and there's Lambeth Palace, where the Archbishop of Canterbury resides. So the Archbishop of Canterbury is the highest priest in England, in the Church of England, that is. If you're a Catholic, of course, it's the Archbishop of Westminster, is the senior priest in England. The Archbishop of Canterbury doesn't spend very much time in Canterbury. That's where Canterbury Cathedral is. He's in London here most of the time. There at Lambeth Palace. Occasionally the gardens of Lambeth Palace are open. Okay, so we're looking here, get a bit of a closer look at the Palace of Westminster. It is a royal palace, though no member of the royal family has lived there for ages. The only person who does live there is the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir John Bercow. So the Speaker, he is chairing the debate. I say he, there's been one woman who's held that position, and it's been going, oh goodness, for many centuries. And the tradition has emerged in the past few centuries, this person has to be scrupulously neutral. Now, he was formerly a Conservative Member of Parliament, but when he was elected Speaker by the House of Commons, he resigned from the Conservative Party, and he doesn't voice an opinion on political matters. It was a hardline Eurosceptic in the old days, but he's not said anything about Brexit or against. Then again, he refused Trump permission to speak in Westminster Hall when Trump came on a state visit. So, okay, that is up to him, but is that interfering in the political sphere? Arguably it is. But he hasn't voiced an opinion for or against Brexit or any other political issue. And by custom, the major candidates, parties of the major candidates don't stand against him, like there was no Liberal Democrat or Labour or indeed Conservative candidate standing against him for a seat in Buckinghamshire. So he's done that job for almost 10 years now, so it's about time he stood aside. There's no particular term, he has to be re-elected every time Parliament is re-elected as MP for Buckingham, but then the House of Commons needs to re-elect him as Speaker. They could choose not to. If they're mired in scandal, as his predecessor Sir Michael Martin was, they're pressurised into standing aside. I'm not sure if they can be voted out by some sort of vote of no confidence, deposed. But anyway, there was this gentleman's agreement throughout the 20th century that it would rotate Labour, Conservative between the two major parties. Prior to that, it had been Conservative, Liberal, when the Liberal Party was a major party. But that broke down in the 90s when Betty Boothroyd stood aside, a former Labour MP, and was succeeded by Michael Martin, who was also a former Labour MP. So that's that. Having to be like a judge or something, or like a referee, and not intervening in the debate. He is ably assisted by some deputy speakers. Now, they do belong to parties, Labour, Conservative, could be Liberal Democrat as well. Don't see why it couldn't be SNP, who are, again, not very involved in the hurly-burly, not front benchers. They can be former front benchers, but need to be respected by all sides to do their job in an even-handed manner. So there are obviously gaggles of these foreign language students here in the summer, and I used to work at these summer schools, so that they give them these what they call backpacks or baseball caps, things like that, that they like lanyards, usually an eye-catching colour so you can distinguish them in the crowd because you're not forced to wear a uniform. I see some of these backpacks say Interstudio Viaggi, which is an Italian company which organises loads of these courses. Okay, let's go a bit further. Scusi, oh Madonna, che succede? So, we're coming on to the statue of Queen Boudica.
Okay.
There we are. Queen Boudica stood up there since 1902. So Queen Boudica of the Iceni, there she is, with her chariot, and there are swords on the wheels of the chariot to chop off the legs of the Roman soldiers. In the 1st century AD, she famously led a rebellion against the Romans. Her husband had been a pro-Roman British king because, of course, when Julius Caesar, the Roman Caesar, got here in 55 AD, there was no concept of Britain or Britannia. There are many different tribes and kingdoms, almost incessantly at war against each other. People at one end of the country didn't realise the other end of the country existed. There was no idea of England or Scotland either. Those came later, largely foreign inventions. But anyway, so some of the British tribes were pro-Roman, the ancient Britons, perhaps I should call them. Some were anti-Roman, her lot were pro-Roman. That was that. Her husband died, and then, but his property was seized by the Romans. She was flagellated by the Romans, and her daughters were supposedly raped. And you can read all about this in Suetonius, because, well, Julius Caesar, remember, it's a century after him, the Romans actually stayed and conquered the whole country. Bit of Scotland, not the whole of Scotland, but all of England, all of Wales, even though England and Wales didn't exist as such. Anyway, she was from what's now Norfolk. That's where the people of the Iceni lived, and she led an insurrection, and they stormed Camulodunum, that's Colchester, but eventually came to grief at the Battle of Watling Street. We don't know exactly where the battle is, but Watling Street runs from Marble Arch to Holyhead, that island off the coast of Wales. Somewhere along that, this dead straight Roman road, and she was defeated, and then she committed suicide. But then she was a hero to Britain for a long time. And then you see a quotation on the plinth of that statue by Cooper. Cooper was this celebrated 18th century god-bothering poet who wrote, regions regions Caesar never knew, thy posterity shall sway. So the late 18th century, the United Kingdom was rising towards its imperial zenith. So his message is that there are parts of the world that Julius Caesar hadn't even heard of, and your descendants will rule them. Though you were defeated, your progeny shall be mightier than the Romans. And so the Pax Britannia model itself on Pax Romana to some extent. There we are, how inspirational. A bit like that figure of Britannia, that fictitious female character who was first drawn in the early 18th century. Okay, ooh, it's green. Anyway, so perhaps that's enough of Westminster Bridge and the Thames, getting here to Portcullis House. And there we have Portcullis House. Lovely. I've been in just once. And there we have the Palace of Westminster. So in about a year, fortunately that all the stuff will all be removed, but it needs major structural work, the House of Parliament. They've known this for 10 years and they haven't bitten the bullet. The cheapest way to do it would be to simply move out for a couple of years and repair it. The more expensive way to do it would be to do it whilst Parliament is still using the building and having to move out of certain parts of it for a year and another part for another year, and it'll take longer. Anyway, so that's that. They still haven't made their mind up about that one. I'll switch it off now.